So keep on going with your silly dream by Piter on AO3. This fic may include suicidal thoughts. That is your warning. Read by Lily6645. Chapter 22, in which Izuku has been an invalid for 3 months. Friendships are blossoming and Izuku hates his new job. Izuku did not go back to Shinso's apartment. It was for the same reason he left his mother and cut Bakugo. He was tired of being a bother. He'd removed stitches and changed his own bandages more times than he could count in these last few months. Sure, he'd never been injured this bad, but it was the same premise. Keep clean, don't get it too wet, and regularly change the bandages. Easy. The worst part of the past 2 months had been his ankle. Based on his research, it'd be at least another month more before his ankle was healed enough to walk on. In the meantime, he found himself frequenting the cafe Uraraka worked at. They talked when they could about everything and nothing. Izuku didn't bring up her financial situation, and she didn't bring up his quirk. Aside from that, Izuku had got his very own job. He had only given into getting on because Stroke needed to eat. Yes, he had kept the cat. How could he not? It was the best thing he'd ever laid eyes on. He couldn't burden a cat, and he would listen to all of Izuku's rambling. He worked at the convenience store across from the place he was staying. They were shady, which was perfect since Izuku couldn't offer them any documentation or ID. He worked from 4 to 10 p.m. It was meant to help younger teens to both work and go to school, but it worked just as well for Izuku as his current routine. Current as in pre-Endeavor era. Izuku groaned, wiping a hand down his face at the reminder. The number 2 hero was still facing backlash at the violent act he'd taken against Yahoo, which ultimately caused his, quote, death, unquote. He thought guiltily back to Eraserhead and Present Mike. They'd been worried and upset. Oh well. They were surely over it by now. It wasn't like Izuku was that important. Kid, hello? I'm ready to check out, the individual grumbled. I'm so sorry, sir. I'll get right to that, Izuku yelped, flushing. He purposefully avoided staring at the man's many scars. They resembled burn scars and covered him like patches. If it was from burns, it would explain the staples. Izuku paused before he began muttering, is that all for today? He put the black hair dye and a few bags of candy into the plastic bag. He was dressed in some edgy trench coat thing. It looked like something Kachan would have worn back in his emo phase. Yeah, keep the change. The man slapped a $10 bill on the counter before leaving the bag. It was $12? You're $2 short, sir. No, yeah, he's gone. Izuku sighed. He hated this damn job. Izuku slowly ran his fingers through Stroke's fur, eyes shut. He was back on the dusty floor with his old All Might blanket covering him. If he was chilly now, he didn't even want to think about how unbearable winter would be. He imagined his room at home, the warmth of his bed. Did his mom clean it now? Get rid of the dust that surely would have gathered in the past 5 months? Or had she not noticed it? Grieving for the kid she'd managed to lose, despite Izuku still being alive. God, had it really been 5 months? He could still picture his old home. He still remembered the smell of his mother, her perfume filling his nostrils while she hugged him after a long shift. Izuku never minded. It was usually a rough day for him too. The teen wrapped an arm around himself, sniffling. He thought being on his own would make him tougher, but he didn't think he'd ever cried so much in his life. Not for the first time, Izuku wondered if his mother and Bakugo even wondered about him, if they were still looking, or if he'd been pronounced dead after his prolonged absence. The next month passed in a blur of exhaustion and dread. He had no way of helping people, no way of speeding up his ankle's healing process. He felt lazy, worthless. But now, Izuku grinned, more of an expression Bakugo would make, and not Izuku. He stretched his ankle, not feeling the sharp pain that had been there previous weeks. It was sure to be weak after not walking on it for 3 months, but hopefully the stretching he'd been doing would speed up the process. Plus, he'd even bought an ankle brace. He hadn't stopped training his upper arms, however. He was worried about his stamina. So Izuku made the difficult choice of putting off going on patrol another week. He'd get back into the groove of running and using his right foot again in general. Plus, he needed to buy a new baseball bat, not to mention how much of his costume still needed to be either replaced or patched up. Izuku smiled to himself. He was back in business. Hello, anyone there? The teen jumped, looking up at the pissed customer. Sorry, sir. What can I get for you? About damn time. Sometimes Izuku wished he had his baseball bat on him, and that assault was legal. That was the end of chapter 22 of So Keep On Going With Your Silly Dream by Pider on AO3. On to the next chapter. Chapter 23. Yahoo lives again! Team up with Mirko. Not clickbait. Emotional. It was a normal night. It was a little humid, the streetlights still flickering, and the streets themselves were sparsely populated. But Izuku himself was a nervous wreck. He knew it, and he knew it. He swallowed for the umpteenth time, adjusting his new leather gloves. The baseball bat in his hand was as comforting as the knife in his hoodie pocket. He wore the same hoodie and goggles, though he'd need to find a new one soon. This one was falling apart. The gloves themselves had surprisingly held up well, despite only being, $5? He wore a different pair of cargo pants and a new bandana. At least the last ones had been unsalvageable. He kept his same red shoes. It was one of the last things still linking him to his mom. Izuku blinked, staring unimpressed at the scene before him. A man with some sort of octopus quirk? Squid? No, octopus, judging by the number of tentacles. Anyways, not important. The man was attempting to pry open a store door using suction, a locked door. Izuku crept behind, winding back to home run before smack! The man laid unconscious on the ground, tentacles still stuck against the glass. Had it not been for the fact he was trying to break into a store, Izuku might have felt a little bad for him. But he didn't. Instead, he felt a familiar shiver run down his spine. It was the welcome sensation, the one he'd missed so much. Maybe Izuku was an adrenaline junkie. He had a lot of work to do. Apparently, just Eraserhead out didn't deter the villains. Izuku, he was really making an impact, despite never having used a quirk. Occasionally through the night, Izuku would receive gasps and shocked stares. Hell, one guy even took a selfie with him. Izuku had awkwardly held up a peace sign before bolting. It made sense. Yahoo was dead. He heard footsteps following him down a fire escape. Turning around at the bottom, Bat prepared to swing. Yahoo, Eraserhead greets. His tone was bland, expression even more so. But Izuku wasn't blind. The man's hands trembled minutely by his side, and he looked like he'd seen a ghost. Technically, Izuku supposed he had. The vigilante stood awkwardly for a moment before he finally waved. The pro-hero approached him, steps cautious and hesitant, as if he was approaching a stray cat. Izuku let him. Then there was a hand laid on his shoulder, like the man was trying to assure himself Izuku was alive, that he was real. Jesus, we all thought you were dead, he breathed. You gave everyone a scare. Izuku shrugged, hoping his apology was portrayed somehow. The hero backed up slightly before glancing back at the teen. I'll give you 5 minutes head start. The vigilante stared in mild confusion, Eraserhead doing his creepy smile thing. I'm done going easy on you after the stunt you just pulled. Izuku blinked owlishly, gulping loudly before sprinting away at top speed. The rest of the night, he kept a low profile, which was a lot harder than it should have been. He wondered if he was trending somewhere. At least people were happy to see him. Izuku leaned against a pole, panting harshly. Yeah, stamina was an issue. Was he dying? It felt like he was dying. Again. Thought you were supposed to be dead. Whoa! Izuku swung out wildly, his bat glaring at, well, he wasn't getting out of this one. The pro-hero Mirko grinned devilishly. I like you. You're feisty. Izuku flushed immediately, shaking his head rapidly in denial. Mirko raised a brow at him. So, yeah, really don't talk then? Izuku shook his head again. Well, what do you say to a joint patrol? Mirko asked suddenly. Izuku blinked in confusion at the change of topic, plus the topic itself. Joint patrol as in Mirko, a pro hero, wanted to patrol with Yahoo, a vigilante, is technically against the rules, but I don't really give a shit about those. Hopefully it'll piss Endeavor off when this hits the press. I was gonna ask you earlier, but turned out you were dead. Though I'd ask before you try again. Izuku shrugged hopelessly. Mirko stared at him like she was waiting. Oh, she asked about patrol, right? Izuku nodded. Let's go then! She took off, the teen sprinting to catch up. Izuku smiled giddily to himself. He was patrolling with Mirko. Mirko! The number 5 hero! He had to say she was a lot more tolerable than Endeavor. They ran almost the whole night, only stopping to beat and catch thugs. It felt nice to have backup. Plus, Mirko herself was amazing. She was quick on her feet, and Izuku would never want to be on the receiving end of those kicks. She was incredibly resourceful and quick-witted, too, only outmatched by her reflexes. Was that also from her quirk, or had that been from some form of training and experience? It was hard to say for certain due to the broad nature of her quirk. Bunnies had an abundance of qualities after all, and Izuku yelped as the hero suddenly jabbed his side from his spot next to her on the roof. You're muttering, she explained around the chocolate in her mouth. They'd taken a pit stop at the gas station after knocking out the would-be burglars. Mirko had bought herself a candy bar and absolutely insisted on buying Izuku one. And here he was, repaying her by being a weirdo. His shoulders slumped in defeat before he pushed a small piece of chocolate bar into his mouth, ensuring the bandana was still firmly in place. Why did he mess up everything? The hero groaned, turning to face him. Well, now I feel bad, she grumbled, nudging him again. Perk up, kid. It's not the end of the world. Izuku cut himself off, slapping a hand over his mouth. Mirko snorted. You're not very good at not talking. For that to be your whole shtick. And she wasn't wrong. Just seeing a hero or villain or passing, he'd be fine. If he talked with them for more than a second, suddenly Izuku couldn't keep his big mouth shut. He looked over at the pro, who was still going ham on her chocolate bar. Maybe it was because of Mirko's drive, her confidence, her combat ability, her damn eyes, all reminded him of Bakugo. No, what Bakugo could be, plus all of the bullying and the cruelty. If things had been different, then maybe. But Izuku had left and had committed the atrocity of being quirkless. He felt liquid fill his eyes, and God, he just couldn't look at her anymore. Izuku couldn't breathe. He needed to run. He shoved the rest of the chocolate bar at Mirko, who let out a surprised grunt before he booked it. He took refuge in the dark, twisting side streets. It didn't help the burning in his chest, so he kept running, and he was back at the apartment, eyes shut. The purr and warmth of stroke pulled him back from his panic, and finally he let out a breath. What was that? It had happened twice now. As soon as he thought too hard about his home, about Bakugo, his mom would know what to do. He let out another small sob. He just wanted to go home. He knew he couldn't. That is the end of chapter 23 of So Keep On Going With Your Silly Dream by Piter on AO3. On to the next chapter. Library tips, meetup, and minor breakdown. OMG, y'all, guess who I just ran into? He saved my ass last night. Live and well? One attached image doc. A ginger girl is grinning at the camera as the shorter figure of Yahoo next to her gives a stiff peace sign. Yahoo stopped my store from being robbed. Thank God he's back. God knows no damn hero was there. Bro, that silly vigilante is so sweet. Like, I was breaking down because, just almost got jumped, and he sits some stray cat in my lap and walks me home. Yes, I kept the cat. Yahoo, the mute Carmen, is back from the grave after a 3-month-long disappearance. Rest assured, this individual will be brought to justice. Pro hero Mirko spotted patrolling with Yahoo, Musatafu's latest rising vigilante. Heroes claim the search and attempt to capture the mute Carmen or Yahoo are still ongoing. Lol, I thought he'd be taller. Izuku exited out of his account on the library computer with a sigh, running a hand through his hair. It could be worse. He could be hated. It really could be worse. But, God, he wasn't sure he liked all the attention. Did pros have to put up with this daily? Izuku felt slightly guilty about his old All Might Twitter stan account, plus all the fanfiction he wrote. Dark times indeed. Izuku stared at the home screen, pondering, what would they do if they caught him? Juvie? House arrest for life? Execution? Okay, that one was a bit far. Was it, though? He groaned, letting his head hit the table with a thunk. Why was he spending his Saturday off work worrying about it? Hopefully it would just blow over soon. After all, the UA entrance exams were only 2 months away now. Deku? A familiar tired voice called out. Izuku lifted his head to meet the purple-haired teen. Uh-oh. Awkward. Oh, hey, Shinso! Izuku waved innocently, like he hadn't dodged seeing Shinso's dad for the past 3 months. Shinso snorted, rolling his eyes. Yeah, sure. Go ahead and play innocent. That was the plan. Well, it was a shitty one, wasn't it? Izuku can't finish his sentence. It was as if everything he was seeing through lenses. It was like Izuku had no control over his body, and a bucket of ice had been dumped on him. Wait. His mind flashed back to the first time meeting Shinso, the odd walk home. His quirk, maybe? How's your leg? It's good now. I didn't go back because I've taken out plenty of stitches and given them, and I didn't want to keep being a huge burden on Eraserhead and Yamada. If he could, Izuku would blink in shock at the word vomit. This quirk, how's stroke? Internally, Izuku both snickered and rolled his eyes. He's getting fat, but I gotta spoil him so it's okay if he's plump. As long as he didn't get more morbidly obese, I got a job to pay for his food. Vaguely, he heard his own words, but he never processed them coming out of his mouth. Izuku gasped at the sudden feeling of his own body again. The world around him no longer covered in film. Sorry about that, but I couldn't have you walking around bleeding out or something. The shorter of the two glared before he sniffed. You care about me so much? I just said I didn't want you bleeding out. Izuku sobbed, burying his face in his hands. He had someone that cared about him. Wow. Wait. Wasn't the whole goal of Izuku leaving so he could stop burdening people by letting them close? His mind flashed to Uraraka and then to Shinso in front of him. If they found out he was a vigilante, well, not only were they both aiming to be heroes, but Shinso literally lived with two pros. He jolted as a hesitant, warm hand pat his back a couple times. Just like Aizawa, it was a little too stiff to be completely reassuring, yet it was